So that's, of course, rankings are just rankings, but it says something important about us. I think these rankings continue to affirm what Lehman College is doing and just how important it is. And I know that pretty much everybody that's in this session this afternoon has got something to do with the reason those rankings are the way they are. But it's great to see, and I think particularly at this time, it's good for us to really understand the importance of what we're all doing. So I wanted to just give you a brief update on the Campus Climate Task Force that I'm putting together. I will be sending out letters of invitation tomorrow to members of that task force, and they will then set to work and begin to map out what near and longer term strategies are going to be addressing various issues on the campus and about the climate of the campus, issues around race and racism, and other really important issues that we want to be having not only ongoing discussions on campus about, that we really want to be mapping out the steps that we are going to be taking. Little report on enrollment. We have an enrollment this summer, which is about 10% higher than last summer. Undergrad enrollment this summer is about 11% higher, and graduate enrollment's about 8% higher. And then looking forward to the fall, which has always been and still remains really kind of our big unknown, or one of our big unknowns. Right now, we're about 1% above where we were last year on fall enrollment at this time. Undergrad enrollment is actually right at the same level, and graduate enrollment right now is up 13% from where it was a year ago at this time. So we know that this can change a lot, but that's a good indicator for us. And if we can stay on that course, then we're going to feel pretty optimistic about enrollment for the fall, but we'll see. We've had a calling campaign that enrollment management organized to call students who've been admitted but haven't yet enrolled. And that campaign has been helped by, again, probably a number of you that are on this briefing this afternoon. And if you have been, thank you very much for doing it. On the budget, which we always have to come to at some point in these briefings, we still really don't have any clarity. We really know more than we did a week ago. We will begin the new fiscal year on July 1. And the only thing that we really do know that we didn't know a week ago is that the CUNY Board of Trustees will not be approving a budget in its board meeting next week, which is just a day or two before the beginning of the fiscal year. So the board has decided not to approve a budget until we actually have some word from New York State about what they will be doing with the budget. I probably shouldn't say until, because it's possible that it could be much longer before we hear from New York State about the budget, at which point the board will need to approve some form of budget. But we won't have a board-approved budget as we launch into our new fiscal year. So once again, uncertainty is our new certainty. And we will just see what happens. And I think we are as prepared as we possibly can be to move ahead, to get the fiscal year started, to prepare for the fall. And we will respond as we have more information. So with the fall, we continue to plan. We are really assuming that we're mostly going to be online for the fall. Again, there's no official word about this, and there really won't be until there's some guidance from the New York State, the governor's office about it. That's what we're planning for. We're planning for largely online fall. Again, we will make adjustments as we have the ability to do so. We're actively working on plans for how we would have some classes on campus in the fall. We're able to, but we will really not know probably for a little while yet about how that's really going to happen. One of the really great things that's happened in the Bronx since the COVID-19 pandemic is the Bronx community relief effort, which is something that actually existed already for a few years, but has really kicked into high gear in response to all the needs that have arisen on top of the already existing needs that were in the Bronx. So the Bronx Community Relief Effort is pulling together a number of organizations. It is raising funding to support a number of things, including education, including addressing the digital divide, food insecurity, and a number of areas where we are engaging with that effort because it's a very broad-based effort across the whole borough, and we are participating in some really, I think, significant and interesting ways, and it looks like as we get into that in the next few weeks and months, there will be opportunities for students to engage as well as faculty and staff in that effort. Another big effort that we've had going on is the Campaign for Lehman. Campaign for Lehman is a fundraising effort. We set out originally a goal of $1 million, and we're raising funds for the food pantry, for emergency grants, for scholarships. That funding is also supporting undocumented students that were not eligible for CARES Act funding. And so far we've raised almost $970,000. So we're getting close to that $1 million campaign goal, but we're going to increase our goal because already those funds are being used at a very fast pace because there's so much need that our students have. And so we're continuing to work hard to raise more money from organizations and individuals. You'll be hearing more about it, but we know very well that going through the summer and going into the fall, every amount of money that we can raise to support students and to support the college is going to be needed. On the topic of the CARES Act funding, we have not yet received any of the CARES Act funding that's coming directly to the college. That funding is for COVID-19 related expenses like laptop computers for students that are loaner computers, other equipment that we did to allow for distance learning and for telework, training online for faculty, and other kinds of costs for online education. So we're still waiting to see how much of that funding will come directly to Lehman College to offset some of those costs. We already know that the costs, aside from the personnel costs, the costs that we have had so far or that we know are coming up very soon are in the $2 to $3 million range at least. So if we count for everything, it's well over $5 million so far. So it's very significant, and we're going to be happy to get those funds. But we also know, again, just like with our fundraising efforts, we know it's not going to be all that we really do need to respond completely to the COVID-19 pandemic and all that has followed in its aftermath. Of course, there is a move in Congress to pass the HEROES Act, which is, I think, probably the fifth funding bill for related to the COVID-19 pandemic, but that bill is really stalled right now because the Senate is really slow walking it. Really, they're not even walking it. It's just sitting there. It's moved back on their agenda, and there doesn't seem to be a sense of urgency right now. Maybe the fact that the COVID-19 has really exploded in other parts of the country, that will change some of the dynamics around that legislation. But until there's federal legislation, we probably are not going to have full certainty about our own state budget. And we realize that given Congress's schedule for the summer, both the Senate and the House, that could well be in the fall before we know that. So again, it's uncertainty. So wanted to mention too, one of the really wonderful things that happened on campus, the screening of College Behind Bars, which was a very well-attended event on campus. Yoshunda, thank you again for organizing that and doing such a great job. And we had a really terrific panel. Penny Prince, our faculty member on campus who was on that panel, Senator Sepulveda, who's heads up the Criminal Affairs Committee in the New York State Senate, but also is in that role, but also in addition and in a lot of other ways has been a real advocate for criminal justice reform. And then we had the filmmaker Lynn Novick and some really important Bronx residents and organization leaders. Victor Rivera was one of them, who and Wes Keynes, both of them really made terrific contributions to this panel. So I think it was a terrific, and there are going to be subsequent screenings. This is a 4-part series of film. Each one of them is an hour, and we will be screening the rest of them in 3 other separate occasions. And I have to tell you, I really encourage you to watch this film. And if you can't attend the screenings that we're doing, it's available on Netflix. I think it's available elsewhere as well, but it's available on Netflix, probably Amazon Prime, and also on PBS. So I really encourage you to watch this entire film. Of course, it says a lot about the criminal justice system. It says a lot about prisons and the criminal justice system in New York State, but it says a lot more about where our society is. So it's just really a very relevant and timely film or series to watch. So please do, however you can do that, please do watch that series. So with that, I would like to turn to Vice President Rotolo, who is kind enough to join us again today in this briefing. Thank you, Rene, for coming. And ask you to give us a little update on the campus, and then we will, after that, we will move on to questions that come in. But first, let's have an update on the campus, particularly focusing, I think, on what's been happening on campus and what we're envisioning happening in the next while.
Sure. Thank you so much, President Lemons. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Before I go into what's been happening on campus and what our future plans are, I'd just like to add to the budget discussion, because I know everyone probably panicked when you said the budget's not going to the board, and they're wondering if we're actually going to have a budget to start our fiscal year. So we don't know what it is yet. We're told we will be getting emergency or temporary funds to get us started in July, which is actually one of our larger expenditure months. So we are anticipating getting information on that next week. And once we know where we're at and what we're doing, we'll give everybody a brief update, but we will be able to start our new fiscal year. So that's good news. As far as what's going on campus, believe it or not, there's a lot going on campus. And it's not really related to Lehman personnel being there, but construction activities have been ongoing on campus. They were approved by both the New York City and New York State to continue. They took a short hiatus during the really peak time of the virus, but then were given quick permission to come back. So we have a couple of major capital projects that have been ongoing and continue to go on in construction, and a lot of activity. So on a daily basis, the DASNY personnel that are assigned to our campus are there every day. The construction management team's personnel are on campus every day, as are the contractors. And the projects that are ongoing are the library renovation. They're down on the concourse level, getting that ready, which includes a brand new computer center and a facelift for all the other spaces, as well as their new ductwork, lighting, and ceiling, similar to what we did on the first floor. I know it seems like a long time ago. We never really had a chance to have the ribbon cutting, but I hope you'll all remember what was done with the first floor and how beautiful it looks. We're also completing construction on the speech and theater amphitheater project, which I think is actually going to be a welcome facility outside for us when we actually do return. It'll be a wonderful place for outdoor performances. We can have outdoor lectures. It's going to be a real asset to the campus. There's also a fuel tank replacement project going on which includes the full renovation of the front and rear, the north and south plazas of the music building, and we'll be installing a new handicap accessible ramp to the entrance of the music building. And work hasn't begun yet on the new nursing facility, but what has happened is the contractor is mobilizing. They're still waiting for their permits to actually demolish the old bookstore and break ground for the new facility. But what they're doing is they're setting up the fence around the facility to secure the site. They're going to be bringing in their trailers, so everything necessary to actually begin the work. And they think they're very close to getting the final permits in place to begin. And then finally, the last thing is there was a little bit more work to do in the concert hall, and that work has been started. It's actually taking what was the old ticket booth inside the building and converting that to a concession. As far as Lehman personnel, we've been maintaining pretty much the same amount of essential personnel on campus as we had through the entire time we've left campus. We've reduced numbers slightly during the height of the virus, but what we've done with our personnel is custodians have been working on 2 shifts. They're staggered shifts, so not everybody is on campus every day, all day. The laborers are on staggered shifts and they're maintaining the grounds. They're also receiving the deliveries we continue to get. The mailroom staff is there. They're working on a staggered shift along with the people from central stores. And again, they've been receiving mail, sorting mail, delivering mail as requested to those areas, or people are coming to the mailroom to pick up the mail for their areas. We have electricians, plumbers, auto mechanics, and locksmiths on campus on a staggered schedule to respond to situations. We need to make sure that the buildings are still functioning completely, even though nobody's in them. We have to keep them safe. We have to make sure the life safety systems are fully functioning. And the property manager has been on site as needed to asset tag the the laptops and computers that we've been loaning out to students, and the equipment and devices that we've actually been ordering for distribution to staff to allow them to work remotely. IT personnel have also been on campus, again, working on a staggered shift to maintain all of our systems in functioning and operating order. And our plant staff have been there around the clock working on staggered, slightly shifted shifts so that we need to maintain all of those systems in proper working order as well. We've had very limited research staff or staff associated with critical facilities coming just to make sure everything is running and operating properly. They're there for a very limited time. And on a daily basis, there are a number of people, and it's a request in advance, which is a scheduled visit, that are coming onto campus to get supplies they need to continue to function properly at home. So that's everything that's currently going on campus now. I am chairing a working group that is developing a plan for a phase 1 return to campus, which revolves mostly around maintenance, operations, research, and administrative staff. And this plan is to be developed and submitted for approval for that time when the governor says it's okay to return back to the campus, which should be somewhere, if all goes well, maybe late July. Now, we're not talking about a mass return back to campus, because we're looking at, as many things as possible will continue to operate remotely. But there are certain things that cannot operate completely remotely. There are certain things that are having difficulty operating remotely. One of the things that the committee is doing to determine all of those things, we have a survey that's going to be going out in the next week to departmental directors and the different divisions that ask specific questions about what things can be done remotely, what things can't be done remotely, if your staff are sharing offices. The intent of the questions is to get departmental directors and managers to start thinking about if they have staff that needs to come to campus to work in order to function properly, what do we need to do to ensure that they're working in a safe environment? So that's the point of the survey and what we're hoping to get. And it'll be incorporated into our plan. So please look out for that and please respond as quickly as possible. So I also know, and it came up at our working group meeting the other day, that there seems to be a misunderstanding about the phase 2 opening in New York City, that it involves the offices and the office staff on the campus. That is not correct. The phase 2 opening has to do with office buildings and personnel in office buildings. Our office staff are related to higher education. Higher education is in the New York City's phase 4. So we will not be returning in phase 2. What has been approved for the phase 2 return is for research to start up. But there are a lot of conditions that have to be met before they can actually begin to start up their research again. There's a plan that's being developed. It's in draft form. There are specific guidelines that must be met. And it's going to be limited to those with funded research and graduate students who are close to graduating. So the plan is in development. The next step is for it to be reviewed by the administration and approved, and it needs to be reviewed by the central office and approved, and there are some documentation that the state requires. And once that happens, research will start to begin again on campus in a very limited and a very set way, which will follow these guidelines. So anyway, I just want to reiterate that Lehman and all the colleges of the City University of New York are in phase 4. We are not in phase 2 with the exception of research activities. So the committee has been meeting fairly regularly to develop these plans, and we hope to have, let me step back. On June 20th, New York State Department of Health issued interim guidance for higher education. So we've just begun the process of incorporating that guidance into our plan, making sure that it jives with it, and anything that's not included in our plan, we're adding into our plan. And CUNY will also be coming out with their guidance, which we will again collate with our plan and make sure it's covered in our plan. And then the next step will be to submit it to the administration for review and to submit it to CUNY for review and approval. And there is a requirement process to submit it to the state for approval as well. So we're a few weeks off of an actual final plan, but I'm very happy with the process we've been following and the point that we're at to right now with what we have. When we get closer to a final draft, I think we'll send it out to some different groups also to review and give us comment. So that's our plan so far for reopening. That's the unit, the phases. And the process we have in place right now is anyone requiring access must submit their request to their either school dean or, well, through their department chair to their school dean or through their department director through their divisional VP. And then we generate and collate a list that is maintained by public safety for allowing access on campus. So we've been trying as much as possible, and there are, some times we do miss or make mistakes, but for the most part, we've been maintaining a complete list that we're recording who is there, where they are, how long they're there, where they've been, when they leave. One of the things we're also looking at as part of the committee is a process for screening from home as opposed to waiting till someone's on campus to screening. One of the things we're looking to screen them for access. One of the things we're looking to do is to have people be able to, from their home, submit via app whether or not they're feeling well. And there's a series of questions they'll answer on this app, and they'll either give them a green light to come in or a red light to stay home, and it'll be recorded. And then when they come to the gate, they'll have to show their green light. to be able to be given access to campus. So there's a number of different process or systems we're looking at to ensure we can maintain a healthy and a safe campus. So I look forward to seeing everybody. I know it's going to be a while before we actually can get back together again, but I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody. It's whenever I'm on campus, there's so few people there, it just doesn't feel like Lehman. You know, it feels like same beautiful campus, but without the life, without the character, without the things that make it so special. So I look forward to it. Anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, VP Rotolo. There have been a couple of questions. One of them is about whether or not people can retrieve items from their offices now, or if they have to wait until phase 4.
Yes, they can schedule access to the campus. It has to be a scheduled access to pick up things from their office. If they're talking about supplies, no problem. Electronics is a problem. We've been limiting it. IT prefers that people do not take their computers from their offices, because if they do decide to return, it becomes a little problematic to then bring it back, and if we have to leave again, take it away. But for supplies and other things they need, yes, they should go through their director or their manager and send the request through either their school dean or their divisional VP.
Someone also mentioned that they imagine the work is getting done more quickly without everybody around. Has that been your experience?
Well, the contractors are happy that nobody's around. You know, 3/4 of the fight I had when I was the AVP for facilities was to stop things from happening that were going to either interfere with classes or interfere with test taking or interfere with other activities we had, convocation, graduation. I mean, you know, some of those things that involve the entire campus. So now no one's stopping them from doing what they need to do as quickly as they want to get it done. So they're happy. Yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But I have to say, and I neglected to say this earlier, the state and city allowed construction activities to resume with very, very stringent requirements in place. Every worker on campus must wear PPE. It's a requirement. They can't come on campus without it. And we've been diligent in making sure of that too. But I have to say the DASNY project manager and his staff on campus, as well as the construction managers, have been enforcing it. They have to let us know who's going to be there every day. They're on a separate list that we get. They they're screening them all to make sure they're healthy. Any issues, any people report any illnesses, they go through the whole contact tracing process with them to make sure that they haven't infected anyone else, or any people with them at the time are self-quarantined for 14 days. We only had one incident of that, which is really good, actually, I have to say. So they have very strict guidelines they're following, and we're very happy with how it's been going so far.
So there's one of the questions that's come in is related to the phases. And I'd like to just add a little bit about that, because we've talked about the kind of the multi-layered way that whatever happens in New York is being regulated. Its first level is the state. The city may have some of its own particularities to that, and then we're inside of the CUNY system, which, as Vice President Rotolo said, is developing its own set of guidelines, and then we have ours. And while I wouldn't want to diminish the importance of those layers that are above us, in a sense, I think that what I would emphasize is that what we do ourselves, to me, is the most important. And let me give you an example. New York is in phase 2 now. New York City is in phase 2, which means that people who are in office buildings can come back in below a certain level of density. They can't just all come back in. There's a density requirement, or minimum, or maximum, I should say, that exists. What I have observed in terms of reporting about that is that many, many offices are way below the maximum number of people that they could have, because people are choosing, or companies and businesses and organizations are choosing to keep their staffing way below what that is, because they are able to function just fine by having people telework, and that is much safer. In fact, I've heard, and I'm sure you have too, you've heard people who are representing companies and organizations say they're not planning to bring people back into the office until 2021, and even then they're not sure. Quite frankly, I think that's more the approach that we will use at Lehman College. We will only bring people back on campus as we absolutely have to, because in terms of a level of risk, it's fantastic that New York is one of only 3 states right now that has really met all of the CDC requirements around reopening, and actually has now reached a very low level of new cases every day and new hospitalizations every day. So that's fantastic. But in a sense, we're still right back where we were in March. We still have huge numbers of people who have not been exposed to the virus and who are just as susceptible as they ever were. And so moving around, being on transportation, being the more contact there is with other people, the more likely there is for viral transmission. And that's going to be our reality for some time to come. I mentioned before the Dr. Osterholm, who's at the University of Minnesota and has an institute that works on infectious diseases. That's his specialty. And I saw him quoted again in the Times today. He was saying he's not sure there's going to be another big wave in the fall. He doesn't know. But what he thinks will happen is just ongoing places where we're seeing now, where in this region, suddenly there's a big uptick in the spread of the virus, and that overall, this may just continue this way indefinitely until something changes, namely that there's a vaccine or some other way to treat. And so that is the situation we're going to be in. And I know that we at Lehman College, and I know CUNY as a university, is going to take the position that we're going to be as absolutely careful as we can. And the first way we can be careful is to minimize the number of people on campus, no matter what New York State says or New York City says. The more that we minimize the presence on campus until something fundamentally changes, the better we're going to be and the safer we're able to keep everybody that's part of the college. So that's going to be what we're going to try to do. But the other thing I want to say, and I think this is going to be a really important message as we move forward, it's already important, it's been important since February, and that is that the individual choices that we all make really make a big difference. And we've seen lots of examples where people are close together, they're not wearing masks, they're not taking even the precautions they could take in situations that are not optimal. Set aside, let alone, you know, the decisions that are made to be indoors in packed situations where people are choosing to be in those kind of contexts. But even there is individual choice about protecting oneself and others. And for wearing a mask for everybody it looks to me, the research is showing, is clearly protective and really reduces viral transmission. Doesn't eliminate it, but it really helps to reduce it. So that's personal choice, and it really is something we all really do and make decisions about every time we go outside, every time we go anywhere. It's how are we going to do that? So I think that, you know, that is going to be really important for us, and I'm pretty confident about our campus and everybody associated with it, because I think we are a pretty responsible group of people. And I think that's what will happen. But as we do have individuals on campus, faculty, staff, and maybe eventually students to some degree, observing those kinds of precautions where there are individual choices are going to be really, really important, and will really make the difference between whether we can do that safely and really, really minimize the risk of any kind of viral transmission or not.
Can I just add to that also that any of the guidelines we're following from or incorporating into our plan from New York State Department of Health, from New York City, from CUNY, these are all considered the minimum requirements. There are some that are mandatory, but again, they're at what are the minimum requirement. And we have the option, and it says so clearly in the New York State guidelines, we have the option to include more stringent requirements if we think that it's appropriate for us and for our situation. And they also allow a lot of flexibility, a lot more than I expected to see in the plan for allowing us to make a lot of decisions as it pertains to us, which I thought was a very good thing. I just want to add for one more thing that I saw in the questions about the New York City Phase 2 and offices opening. I attended a meeting at central office, and they clearly stated without any question that colleges are not to return in the Phase 2 for office openings, that only pertained to the central office, not to the colleges. The colleges are in Phase 4 with the exception of research, which could potentially be in Phase 2, but has to meet and have approved plan, has to meet the requirements and have a number and have the approved plans in place. So I want to make that clear.
Great, thank you. There's also a question about teaching remotely in the fall. President Lemons, do you want to address that?
Sure. Yes, the question about what to be prepared for as a faculty member looking to teaching courses in the fall. What we've really asked everyone to do is to be prepared to teach online or partially online in the fall. Not to make the assumption that we can have students on campus, in-person classes, certainly not in any kind of way that we would ordinarily have done that going into a new academic year. So it's really important that all faculty members are preparing to offer their courses online or in ways that, by and large, the course materials and the curriculum is available online in a hybrid format, anywhere from hybrid to fully online. Because maybe I think my personal opinion, and it's just an opinion, but my opinion is that when we finally get to the place where there isn't an official announcement that can be made about this, it's very likely to be that we're going to be mostly online. CUNY did a study about a month ago, tried to identify across the whole university what percentage of classes seem to be able to be offered 100% online if they needed to be. And it's a very high percentage. The percentage was somewhere between, as I recall, 83 and 85%. So it's a very high percentage that can be offered that way. And our position is we need to be ready to do that. For those other classes, we also need to be ready to offer as much of those classes as can be online. And if there are parts that can't be, and we know there are classes like that, right? There are laboratory classes, and there are art studios, and there are hands-on kinds of parts of classes that just really cannot be done online. For those, we don't know how we will do that, but for the parts of those courses that can be, they need to be prepared to be taught online.
That's great. Well, it looks like that's it for our questions. So if you wanted to mention any other, well, there's one more. Will we still be expected to teach 90% or what percentage of the hybrid courses online in the fall?
Well, again, the way I would respond to that is that most courses, which is close to 90%, it's maybe a little bit under that, but the courses that can be taught online, faculty members should be planning to do that, and they should be preparing to do it. And I don't say that lightly because I have done that. I know how much work that is to do that well, and I know it's a big task to do it. But it is really important to be prepared, and hopefully we'll have some ability to do something more in a hybrid approach, but we really just cannot count on it. Here's another question related to that. I think, will there be ample tech support to bring those courses online and hybrid? And what we've been really trying to do it really began 2 months ago, is to provide more training, both in the longer course that we've always had to prepare to teach online, but also there's a short course. It's a 1-session course, basically. It's about 90 minutes, I think, something in that order, 70 to 90-minute course that we're offering. And what we're doing is we're providing the support for full-time faculty and part-time faculty members to take those courses so that they can use them to help prepare to teach online. So training is one of the ways that we're providing as much resource as we can. The university itself is working on a very ambitious plan. It's not rolled out yet, but it's a very ambitious plan to greatly expand that training. So the training part is definitely in place, and our IT has been working and will continue to work, both the IT and our online support office, which is a pretty robust office, to provide the tech support and both kind of pure tech support in terms of access and other aspects, but also online course design and course implementation through our online office. So we're very aware that these resources are needed, and that faculty members will need all the support they can get to do the best job they can in terms of offering courses online.
Can I add to that also that I know the provost has asked the deans to look at what classes would be difficult to teach online, to look at maybe a potential hybrid area, but they want to identify what those classes are, so that in the same way that we're surveying administrative staff to see what can be done remotely and what is very difficult to do remotely all the time, we can look at classes in the same way and then determine how to best and most safely do that on campus in either a hybrid model, or again, it's in the very early stages of that. But we're looking and they're beginning those discussions.
And Renee's, I'm sorry, did you want to address this question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. And there was a question about special accommodations for high-risk people. And there is a process that will be in place. There will be a series of policies and procedures which are in the process of being developed now by HR that will become part of our plan, and that will speak to the process for people who are in high-risk categories, or who are living with people in high-risk categories, or have childcare issues, or there could be any host of reasons why it is better for them to work remotely. Will be addressed through those documents, and all of it will be handled through HR. So yes, there will be a process for that.
Thank you, VP Rotolo. President Lemons, I think this might be for you. There's a question about those who do recruitment at other colleges, and if they'll have support to do videos they can offer to community colleges.
Wow, that's a great question.
It is a great question.
And I think the answer to that is yes, because you know, this is part of our being able to work in this environment and work effectively. I know that we will push all of our resources really to the limit, and that's true for IT, and it's true for our media team that does a lot of work with all parts of the campus in terms of preparing videos and for presentation. But yes, I think that those kind of activities where we need to produce special videos, it's a really important part of being able to function in terms, in this case, in terms of recruitment. We will make every effort to provide those resources and make sure that that can be done.
Great. Well, I think that's it for our unanswered questions. So it looks like we may wrap up a little bit early.
Good. So I want to swing back to something I said at the beginning, which has to do with what we're all going to be doing individually whenever and however we're able to be physically back together on campus. And it goes to one of something we've touched on, which Vice President Rotolo talked about, screening, an app that every individual that would be approved to come to campus would do before they left home. And a very simple question: how am I feeling? If I'm not feeling well, what is it? Do I have a fever? We all know that screening is not a perfect filter. Screening is not going to prevent an infected individual from coming to campus. One of the first ways that could happen is that, of course, you can answer that app, the questions on that app, completely honestly, and I expect that almost everybody would do that. But if you're asymptomatic, you're going to say, I'm feeling fine. You will not know. You may very well not know that you could be infectious. And so in that sense, screening, and we see lots of places where infrared temperature checks are being done, doesn't help at all with the 35 to 40% of infected individuals who are asymptomatic, or if they're pre-symptomatic, or if they're symptomatic and they took a Tylenol and dropped their fever, which we all do, right? So there are three ways that, for instance, temperature screening at an entrance, as far as I'm concerned, is really not very helpful. And plus, that means that every individual that comes to the campus already exposed one of our public safety individuals potentially, because they actually got close enough to have a temperature check. So to my mind, that's not a really great screening technique. But even the app, which you do at home, and it gives you a green light and says you're okay to come, of course, that's not going to be 100%. So what do? We have individuals that are really essential, need to come to campus, have permission to come. What do we do? Well, one of the things that you've probably noticed some campuses are doing is they are instituting comprehensive testing programs. Mostly they're RNA testing, so they're looking for active virus. Some of them are also serological, where they're looking for antibodies, which are indicators that there was already an exposure that's probably now in the past to SARS-CoV-2. We are not going to be able to do systematic screening like that, testing that is, for a couple of reasons. One is it's very, very expensive. It's still ranging around $100 per test to do a test. So that is not something that is going to be feasible for a public university to do, at least not one in New York State. There are universities that are doing that. The University of Southern California, UC San Diego is doing that. The UC San Diego has a big medical center and a big research group that is able to actually devote themselves to doing that. Even then, it's going to cost them many, many millions of dollars if they do this systematically through the fall. So it's not to do that, first of all, isn't logistically or financially feasible, but it's also problematic. And it will be interesting, actually, they're sort of the guinea pigs in this in terms of how it will actually work. Because even if you are able to test everyone one time before they come to campus, that doesn't guarantee you that the next day that person hasn't been exposed and now will be positive. And so are you going to retest everybody? How frequently are you going to do that? Are the tests that you're doing even reliable? There are very, very many false negatives on the RNA test, and even more false negatives, up to 50% false positives, that is, on the serological test. So the data itself, even if you try to obtain it systematically, is not reliable. And can you really base how people are coming onto campus and how they're able to move around campus on that? So testing is really not going to be part of our solution unless there's something that really changes dramatically in reliability and logistics and cost. So we're going to have to rely on other things. And this kind of brings me back to again, what I wanted to say is that I'm sure that we're going to be using an app for screening. We'll use some app, probably one that we're looking at right now. That's going to rely on the integrity of every individual related to the college who's coming to answer that accurately. And of course, if you want to come to campus and you're not feeling well, but you don't want to say that, the app doesn't know, that's going to be your response. So the integrity of everyone is going to be very important. And that's just the case no matter where you are in this country or in the world with this pandemic. A lot of what's going to happen is really going to depend upon individual choices. I'm pretty confident about how that's going to work at Lehman College. But it is something that we will continue to emphasize, whether it's answering that app faithfully or whether it is being sure that a mask is on at all times, whether it's washing hands or observing other kinds of things that we know will really limit the problems and the possibility of transmission. So I'm going to end there, but I think that I'm not worried about that. I think that we're in very good shape on the integrity factor at Lehman College. But I just want to emphasize we will definitely be relying on that, because that is really going to be probably it's going to be our front line for staying safe. So with that, I think we will wrap up. Yeah, we're wrapping up a little bit early, but I want to again thank everyone for attending today, and look forward to our next briefing.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.